Welcome to the Futurebuild Podcast, where we explore the innovations shaping the built environment. I'm your host, Martin Hurn, Futurebuild Event Director, and today I'm thrilled to have Joe Walsh. He is co-founder and CEO of BioSip. He's got over 20 years experience in the tech industry, having led strategic growth and product innovations at companies like Samsung, Stanley Black & Decker and AE. And Joe has made a transformative leap into the built environment. In 2021, Joe co-founded BioSip. It's a company that's revolutionising construction by turning post-consumer waste into sustainable, high-performance building materials. We'll, in this episode, explore Joe's unique journey from tech leadership to pioneering eco-friendly solutions in construction. We're going to discuss how technology and sustainability are converging and dive into how BioSip is helping to address the global challenges by reducing plastic waste and reshaping the way we think about living spaces. Beyond his work with BioSip, Joe's innovative mindset has been shaped by his time at Singularity University, where he honed his vision of using technology to solve global problems. Joe's leadership has earned him industry recognition, including Garden Building of the Year in 2024 and the BOSE Innovation Award. So, let's explore Joe's journey, the exciting innovations at BioSip, and his vision for a more sustainable future in construction. Joe, absolutely brilliant to have you on the podcast. And we actually bumped into each other at an offsite expo and got talking. And I just found your story fascinating, actually. And I thought, let's get you on the podcast. Tell us a little bit about yourself, especially your background in the tech industry as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I think I'll try and link that to the journey towards construction. And really, I think my background really has been in tech for the last 20 years, but I've made this big leap and this big transition to the construction market. Firstly, out of curiosity, I originally grew up in London and I was on the tube a lot growing up, and I became quite obsessed with, watching people when they got on the tube and how they'd go from this most charismatic, outgoing person to be this, almost enter this state of autopilot, like knees down, like eyes in, don't smile at anyone, even though they're standing right next to you or sitting right next to you. And it got me thinking, like, we adapt to our situation. We don't tend to challenge the system. And, I think the same thinking can be applied to construction. Certainly when we know some of the facts, like 39% of the global CO2 comes from the built sector. We know that house prices are rising, probably to an extent that, the chance of my kids owning a house, unless they end up being a footballer or a tech billionaire, is pretty slim. We know that each house we build produces about 40 to 50 tons of CO2 and cuts down about 50 mature trees. I mean, kind of none of it makes sense, but that whole curiosity for me about looking at the construction space is kind of what drew me towards it. The second part of, I guess, my journey is the tech and its convergence into industries like construction. I was fortunate enough to spend a bit of time at Singularity University and some amazing minds there. And really the premise of that is to study and look at technologies like everything from mobile AI, mixed reality, hyperledgers, blockchain, and how they can be applied to different industries. And I think, certainly when I look at the construction industry and some of the challenges we face, planning, installation, procurement, the use of those technologies can dramatically change and transform the image and the output. And then finally, I guess my journey and the reason why, I'm into this is purpose, right? And I've got 3 children and they're super important to me, although my patience is like completely vanished now. But, I think Barack Obama said it like most elegantly, which is we're the first generation to feel the effects of climate change. We're the last generation that can do anything about it. And that like resonated with me. It stuck with me. And I kind of thought, I want to do something about this. I don't want to just I don't want to be like I'm on the tube and I'm not engaging and I'm not sitting down. I want to discuss it and I want to work with an idea that's going to do something about that. And that's why I'm at BioSip.
So you've gone from Samsung, you mentioned, Stanley Black & Decker, EE, now to a very disruptive startup, actually.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about innovation before we get into BioSip, because I've got loads of questions about that. It's a fascinating product, and I think it's amazing what you guys are doing. Before that, tell us a little bit about your sort of perceptions of innovation in the built environment, because we are an industry, in my mind, that innovates, but also one that's stuck very traditionally as well, a lot of red tape.
Yeah.
What's been your experience of sort of coming in with fresh eyes?
Yeah, and I suppose comparing both tech and construction, there's some similarities, 100%, but there's some differences that really stand out. I think in both industries, like innovation is the necessity to solve real world problems, right? But I think in the tech world, it's about speed. I'd probably call it pace. You launch something, you get feedback, you iterate, you relaunch it. That process is lightning quick. That's like weeks. I think in construction, by contrast, that whole process is kind of about 2, 3, 4 years. And that stifles talent and innovation and ideas, because to change anything, to get actual data to change anything is so difficult. So I think that's certainly a stark difference. The second thing I'd probably say in tech, it's very much data enabled. It's information enabled. I don't see that in construction. It's quite fragmented. There's limited data pools. There's limited people or platforms or open source platforms which are saying, this is how you can build a building sustainably. I haven't found it. And please, if I don't know everything, but I think it's fragmented where tech is a lot more. It's there, and that drives innovation and that drives that change. I think the attitude also towards risk is very different, and in some cases, like rightfully so, in construction, the financial stakes are a lot higher because of the model we're operating under. And I think, safety is obviously a paramount concern, like sacrosanct, goes without saying. I think risk in tech is celebrated. Like that's a brilliant thing. If you fail, well done.
Fail fast.
Yeah, because you learn how to iterate and change, right? And I think conversely, in construction, I think it's the complete polar opposite. And the last point I'd probably say is diversity. I think the tech world there's still a lot of work to do, but they've made some great movements towards having a more diverse organization. Literally all the research without question says if you have a diverse organization, you get better decision making, you're more productive, you get better innovation, better bottom lines, right? All the research. I think conversely in the construction industry, being a bit frank, it's a bit, white balance. It's like it needs to do a lot more to attract the talent in, to give it that fresh perspective, those new ideas, and to drive that innovation. That would be my highlights.
Talking about new ideas, it'd be great to talk about maybe how BioSip came about, how there's 3 founders, so it'd be great to sort of talk about how you got involved in that, but also maybe the challenges that you saw that BioSip is the innovation and the solution to.
Yeah, I mean, like I think with any innovation, it's born out of almost frustration. And we certainly kind of saw the opportunity to provide the intersect between a couple of major issues and challenges that we face, not just in the UK, but globally. And that is the plastic waste crisis and sustainability in general, but also the need for people to have, homes and places to kind of rest their head at night. And, all the great research that comes off the back of someone having a home, all the mental health benefits and the societal impacts. And we wanted to build something that was frameless, super sustainable, easy to assemble by semi-skilled workers. Like even I could do it, which is what my business partners say to me.
And have you?
Yeah, I've done it. I'm not, I'm the tech guy. I'm not the builder guy, but I can do it. But today where we've got to is our panels are made out of 88% of waste materials, which is something we were so passionate about because there is such an abundance of materials in the world, which we're just not using. And instead of creating so much waste, let's use some of it. We use engineered recycled plastic bottles. Each panel contains about 2,000 plastic bottles. And then we combine that with a skin of hemp or flax. which is a phenomenal plant. So these panels are strong, they insulate well, they fit together like Lego bricks. And that kind of reduces almost a lot of the complexity of a wall build-up. You don't need adhesives, you don't need bolts and screws, an OSB board, you don't need like a breather membrane, you don't need any of that. You just need the panel. So for example, a 50 square meter building with a fair sized room, that can be delivered on one lorry. It can be carried by 2 people through a door and erected in just a couple of days. It's simple, it's scalable, it's sustainable.
I know people, listening to this will bring up the age-old question of cost, but also performance as well. How does it sort of compare on those two sort of more traditional SIP panels?
Yeah, like really well. In fact, not really well, better, but like quite a bit better. So from a CO2 point of view, it's roughly about an 87% reduction from a full carbon assessment point of view. So CO2 tick. But actually, performance, and you can go onto our website and go through, all of the different elements, water, acoustic, fire, etc., etc. It's all on there, and it performs comparably and well. And from a cost point of view, it's there as well. It's reasonable. Of course, there is where we are in the economies of scale. There is a difference, obviously, but yeah, there's nothing stopping us getting to a comparable position and a cost position of traditional SIPs today.
So you've been quite new to the construction industry. I'd be interested to ask your opinion on what's stopping, or what some of the barriers to the scalability of products like this. Because you sort of, when you say those stats and figures, you think, well, this ticks every single box. What's sort of some of the hurdles that you're coming across?
Yeah, I mean,
that are unique to the built environment.
I mean, like, where do you start? There's a lot. I mean, specifically to BioSip or more broadly?
Just more broadly, I think. Maybe, to BioSip.
Yeah, I mean, I think more broadly, I call this, and this is this comes a bit from Singularity University, the corporate immune system. Right, and the corporate immune system is built to protect the status quo, and that is everything from regulatory, legal, all the mechanisms possible to protect how we do things today. And that's difficult, and certainly for a disruptor or a modernizer in the construction industry. The regulation to get through your building regs, it's hard. But not only is it hard, technically, it's very, very expensive. So you have to surround yourself with people who can guide you, help you along the way. So, we've partnered with, University of Warwick, we've partnered with the UK GBC, Composites UK, Innovate UK, people like that who can really provide that support to say, don't go down that rabbit hole because you're going to get lost and it's going to cost you a lot of money. So we've been like super fortunate, but you have to find this all out when you start out. So that's been a significant barrier. I think the planning system, I mean, objectively, and obviously my own opinion, it's like just outdated. It's slow, it's not agile, it's not responsive to localized and individual needs or demands. Last year, just in the UK, there was a 13% reduction in planning applications. In pound, shilling and pence, that's about 30,000 applications less. Why? Now, I'm sure there's several factors at play, but one of the factors shouldn't be the process itself. I'm sure if we kind of set out on the journey and we said, right, what we'd all like to achieve is a system which is localized, where I could go on to a website and within 5 or 6 clicks, it could tell me exactly would my planning be approved and why and what could I do about it. That would be the answer. But right now, that whole process costs money, time. You have to employ someone to kind of say, can you guide me through this process? It's just, that's certainly a barrier. The 2 other areas I'd probably also call out is, I do think skilled labour shortage in the UK is an issue. The average age of a construction worker in the UK is 52 years old. So like in the next 2 decades, probably less, those people are not going to be here. They're going to be out of the market. So, even if we can continue to do things like we're doing, who's going to do it? How are we going to attract the new people to build tomorrow? And then the kind of the final barrier that I see is like the buildability of products. What we've tried to do at BioSip is simplify everything, make it easy, so even I can do it. And I see some of these great organizations like volumetrics companies that have come out, but like in one panel there's like 20 different layers. And when you're building that off-site, you're prefabricating it, you're customizing it for an individual need, then you're assembling it, putting it on a massive lorry, taking it, hiring a crane to drop it into place. You can kind of understand why the complexity there is fraught with challenges from a P&L perspective, and why ultimately a lot of them have gone to the wall.
And at the moment, I think it's fair to say that you're sort of targeting the sort of garden office and micro homes, and that's because obviously there's less planning involved in there in a sort of a start bit. But where do you see the scale of this going?
Yeah, I mean, so BioSip has got, I think, a massive opportunity. It's one of the reasons why I feel so passionate about it. But, like any kind of innovation, it starts with an MVP, a minimum viable product. And the BioSip is the centerpiece of everything we're going to do. So right now, we're focusing on, I guess, what I would call the unregulated space. And that ranges everything from garden offices to micro homes to training centres, visitor centres, scout huts. I mean, there's so many different types of applications. And that's really we want to get the product out there. We want to survive. We need to make some money. And we're working with as many partners and models as possible, and hopefully, and customers as well. To make sure we can do these jobs. So the MVP is going well. We've got several buildings out there already, and I'm like super excited about it from a potential point of view. And maybe we can come on to where I see things going down the line. But I certainly want to get to this model sooner rather than later of a distributed micro factory. It really makes a lot of sense for everyone. You get the localized production. You get the massive reduction in CO2. I mean, how much money we spend on transport and logistics today is painful. So I think that's probably where we'll get to. But of course, not just in the unregulated space, but in homes. That's certainly where I see the potential.
Let's talk about that a little bit more, because I had Alistair Parvin on. We talked about micro factories, and I think he was talking there about the cost of CNC machines has come down dramatically. This community sort of style of build, where if we can make planning easier, especially in the UK, we have a very, very small self-build market. It's tied up in a lot of issues around funding and red tape. But I think that's one way that we can release the sort of start to achieve those housing targets if we made it easier on the self-build side of things, especially a community build. So break down what a micro factory means to you, and where you see that sort of having the biggest impact.
Yeah, I think they are the future of how we construct things, and I think the decentralization of that and almost putting it in the power of local communities makes a lot of sense. But as you quite rightfully said, you can't do this in isolation. You need to do it in line with the modernization of the planning system, the modernization of architecture. Like, it all kind of needs to kind of fit together neatly. But certainly there's a lot of benefits to a micro factory. I mean, first of all, like localized production, where you can set up small, nimble, mobile factories, and really the cost of doing that, it's not a great deal of money. It's actually quite reasonable.
So taking the BioSip product, what would that micro factory look like? Is that extruding the
100 square meters maybe max, made out of BioSip. So we could erect that factory probably within about a week, maybe less than that. And you'd need probably about 3 or 4 machines, and you'd need the materials to be sent there. And I think where we know we can get to is we could churn out probably a panel every 11 to 12 minutes.
Wow.
So, when you put that into the construct of what you need to build buildings, you're, and that's just like one line, you're starting to get into the many thousands of potential homes that can be built like rapidly. So there's a lot of opportunity, but the benefit of a micro factory is not only the cost point of view, but again, it's what the purpose that we're driving for. It's the sustainable, benefits that come off of that. And I think there's two. First of all, that not having to put like buckets of pallets on a lorry and ship them miles and miles up and down the country is the obvious thing. But secondly, it's the fast iteration that comes off the back of that. So in the design, planning, build phase, there's always changes. The client wants to change this, the client wants to change that. If you've got a factory which is just down the road, it's much easier to engage with the community and provide those rapid iterations. So I just think there's like so many benefits to micro factories. Obviously the economic benefit, local jobs, community-based management of what houses go where and what they're made out of. But like if you compare that to the model we've got today, which is, ultimately, and maybe this is a bit controversial, but just my opinion, a system where you've got a whole group of companies, there's not that many, it's all linked to their shareholder value. And then the model is based on building the cheapest homes on a restricted land supply to drive their value up. I mean, if we're all comfortable with that model, great. I don't think the vast majority of people in the UK or other countries would be happy with that. I think we can be a lot more sophisticated about what we want. And
well, quite simply, we can't hit our housing targets, and we can't provide the healthy homes that we should be providing.
Yeah, well, 100%. It's like, I'm sure we're just about to go into budget season now, and we're going to build 300,000 homes, but I'm not sure A, how they can pay for it, and B, how they're actually going to do it, and even probably more importantly, how they're going to do it sustainably. Another issue, and I'm on my soapbox now, so I'm just going to carry on. Another issue is like the lack of plan or legislation around embodied carbon. I said at the start, the built environment contributes 39% of CO2. And, we focused certainly here in the UK about operational energy efficiencies like heat pumps, solar, wind, all very valid. But the embodied carbon of the construction of materials, the embodied carbon of the construction phase and the eventual demolition of it has just been, broadly, there's no plan. And that's, I think, a big issue we're not addressing. I find, the lack of leadership from government on this, a bit of an issue for all of us. And that's why we're trying to do something at BioSip about it, take matters into our own hands.
I want to go back slightly and ask you about your material choices, actually, because we talked about, the sort of the inner core 2,000 recycled bottles going into that.
Yeah.
But I'm actually quite interested in your choice of sort of outer skin, and in particular using hemp. It's a product that can be locally grown, produced, has amazing properties.
Yeah.
And it's just great to see actually the use of it starting to scale. Like, we've seen it at the show over the years, but it's sort of, it's really starting to come through as a viable product now.
Yeah, I agree. Look, I mean, hemp is an amazing material concept. Natural fiber, probably not what everyone thinks it's amazing for, but it's like unbelievably durable. First of all, I think the couple of points is it takes about 10 weeks to grow.
Yeah.
So realistically, you can deliver 2 to 3 yields per year, plus producing it, because you've got to do a lot of work after the actual plant's grown. So it requires minimal pesticides as well. So it's like super easy to grow really quickly. You can grow in most places, obviously climate sort of dependent, but it sequesters 160% of its body weight in CO2. Now that's more than any other planet, pretty much, any other plant on the planet. And so it's an amazing CO2 grabber. It regenerates the soil it's grown in, which improves the quality for future crops. It's super durable, and it's of course biodegradable. So for us, like when we were thinking about what to use, like hemp is a natural choice. It gets great thermal benefits as well. So keep cold out and the heat in. So it makes all the sense in the world. And the market's like growing with hemp. I can see it's involved in like hempcrete, and there's a whole different market coming up from it. And I just don't think we've probably understood enough about it. There's not enough data on it, certainly, but from our uses, it's a phenomenal material.
I think from a UK perspective, it just needs the investment in the processing.
Yeah.
Because it's a hard plant to process with some machinery to do it. And I think that's the only thing that's holding it back.
Yeah. I mean, we've got space, we've got soil, we've got the land, we've got the industry, we've got the technical know-how. And look, there's I speak to quite a few people, and there's a lot of investment, I think, coming into it slowly, but it all really ends up in, well, what are you producing it for? And what's the applications it ends up in? And obviously there is broadly things like hempcrete and insulation, but to make it as part of the fundamental way we build, I think that's where it becomes exponential and transformational.
Yeah. Now, I couldn't have you on and not talk about AI in particular. Your background, being in the tech industry, it would be great to get your perspective on really maybe how AI is starting to disrupt both the architectural side, the built environment overall, but also manufacturing as well.
Yeah.
I'd just love to see your view of sort of how it's embraced at the moment, but maybe how it's going to disrupt.
I mean, look, AI is probably one of the most transformative technologies we have, and the iterations of it. And what I mean specifically by that, if we look at architecture in particular, like Gen AI is probably the most obvious choice. The ability for almost an architect to have that creative partner next to him or her. If you're trying to generate ideas, the ability to very quickly, and I mean at lightning speed, to be able to say, here's 100 different ideas of sizes, shapes, or parameters that you set around. Here's the forecasting of the environmental impact of this building. All of that information, Gen AI can deliver pretty rapidly, and actually become people who are actually employing the architect and the architect themselves more informed about what they're doing and the impacts they're having. And of course, like the other obvious thing for, I think, architecture and AI on that segue there is the iteration speed. I'm not sure how many architects you've worked with, but when you do put a change request in, that process usually takes about 3 or 4 weeks. And again, this comes back to the whole construction process is long. It's really long when it doesn't really need to be. And, the ability to be able to put technology to, fast fail and go, no, I don't want that there, I want this here. AI can do that, and it can do it rapidly.
I think the advancements it just enables you to be more creative, because it takes a lot of that grunt work away.
Yeah.
Things. I'd love to know sort of, it's a bit of a sort of a sort of left field question, but I'd love to know, you being in tech, how you use AI in your sort of daily life.
All the time. Like everything I do. Actually, I'm not really talking to you now. I'm a big tech adopt. I use it a lot, but I think the key point is to not be fearful of it, and it's to understand that AI is there to sift through the information for you. It's not to make your own decisions. I don't use it to formulate my own ideas. I might use it to research some bits of information. There's a lot of junk information on the internet. We're awash with it. Everywhere we go, there's just junk. It's a mess. And I think what AI can do is help you do that. But understanding its pitfalls, like it does provide a cookie cutter design until it learns a specific subject, and it does take away from that human personality. But if you work in tandem with it, how you work in your life can be just infinitely more productive, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I'm trying to outsource my life. I haven't quite got there yet. You mentioned before that sort of BioSip would always be the sort of the core. I'm intrigued on sort of what does the future hold for the company? What does the future hold for BioSip?
Yeah, well, I mean, me and the team often use this phrase, and we bread today, jam tomorrow. And of course, jam tomorrow is the promise of tomorrow. And I think it's where it gets super interesting for me. BioSip is our MVP. It's the centerpiece of what we do. But I think where I would like to get to is much way beyond that. And I take some of my learning and my ideas around when I spent a long time traveling around. I spent a long time in India, Pakistan, Indonesia, places like that. And when you see firsthand the scale of the plastic waste crisis, you see the scale of children living on the street, or families under a sheet metal box. It's like emotional. It's like super impactful. And you kind of ask yourself why is that happening? But for them, it's reality and it's survival. But the housing need for, sustainable, warm, safe housing is like, it's so clear. And then I also think about the conflict zones that are around, and, like take Ukraine. And eventually when peace comes, there's going to be a requirement for people wanting to return home, and they're going to want to rebuild, right? And again, the need for quick, fast housing is so important. However, when you put all that together, is at that scale, and you look at the amount of homes and structures we need globally compared to our population, it's far too complicated. We're never going to hit those targets. We're never going to achieve them. It's just, we're kidding ourselves, I think. And where I would like to take BioSip, back to your question, is almost getting to a 5-click model. I'd like 5 clicks on the internet to be able to circumnavigate architecture, planning, procurement, financing, buying. And we might not get there, like, it's just super hard to do that. But like, if I go back 30 years ago and I said, like, you want to go and buy a car, you would probably say to me that, well, there's a process. You're going to have to go and see the car. You're going to have to go and speak to the salesperson 20 times, and you're going to have to work out all the detail. Now, if you go and buy a car, predominantly on a lot of the big manufacturers, but certainly the one I'm thinking of is Tesla. It's 4 or 5 clicks. You bought a car. Delivers next day. Why can't we do that with building? Why can't we do that? And I'd love to get to that space. So we're going to go into a place with deployment of AI from architecture into the planning process. But again, it's all centered around the minimum viable product for us, which is BioSip.
So we talk a lot about collaboration. I think the industry, especially the built environment, is sometimes guilty of working in silos. We're sometimes guilty of being really risk adverse, quite rightly, and in some aspects, but that's a barrier to innovation. You mentioned quite a lot. You worked with different universities, Innovate, UKGBC. What's maybe the collaborations that could really help you now? What's the sort of how do we scale BioSip in the short term?
Yeah, half the battle is with anything in a disruptive phase is market awareness. So the more business models, but if there's one bit of advice I learned a long time ago, it's like partner. Just work with as many organizations as you can to find different routes to market. So, if there's one thing we can do now, anyone who's listening who, you're in a position to have a conversation with me about how to partner and to take BioSip out, I'd love to talk.
Well, we're going to put the link in the podcast, the website as well, so we'll put that. I'd love to ask you a little bit about, we theme our whole event and the podcast around impact, and it'd be really interesting to sort of see who's had a massive impact on you personally throughout your career. You've already quoted some quite famous people, but yeah, sort of, who's had a big impact, who's maybe shaped your approach to leadership.
Yeah. Look, there's so many, and we all have our individual people that, we learn from throughout our lives. Several people have had a huge impact for me. Obviously, family, my father, but, certainly I can think of people like Ray Kurzweil, Peter Diamandis, Salim Ismail, and their work they've done at Singularity University. They talk a lot about having an MTP, a massive transformative purpose. And like, there's plenty of companies that do it today, like Google, organize the world's information, or Tesla, which is accelerating, mankind's journey towards sustainable electric. So there's plenty of purposeful ideas out there, and I took that a lot from those guys. But if I was going to say there's one person that's really had an impact, it's got, love him or hate him, it's got to be Elon Musk. I had the pleasure. And it definitely was the pleasure of working on the Tesla project back in 2013. A lot to do with their connectivity, actually. And his mind to process information and problem solve is just it's vast. It's a brilliant mindset. And the one thing that always stuck with me, I saw him actually on an interview, and he was getting a bit of a grilling because he was talking about the Hyperloop, and the Hyperloop's like an underground fast transportation system that he's trying to get off the ground. And the interviewer turned around to me and said, right, so Elon, you want to build a tunnel, you want to fire people on it at 750 miles an hour underground in a pressurized environment. How are you going to slow them down without killing them? Right. And he looked at the camera and he just went, yeah, it's an issue. I just thought that answer was just brilliant. Like his ability to be able to just go, yeah, okay, well, we can solve that. And you look at where he's gone from there, and it was only in the press this week. He caught literally a rocket ship out of the sky, and then the launch of the robo-taxi as well. His mindset, his want to deploy technology to modernize actually some pretty simple things for us.
Yeah, his speed of innovation
is
unbelievable. I mean, just on that rocket ship, people don't realise that's bigger than the Statue of Liberty.
It's massive.
It's huge.
Yeah, and it's filled with fuel.
Yeah.
It's like that thing will blow up if you miss it. Just the speed of innovation, the thought, the purpose. I think when you combine that, if we could take some of that in the built environment with BioSip, I think that we're going to make some waves.
Maybe we need some eccentric billionaires.
Well, I'll tell you when I'm on.
I'm going to finish with two questions for you. Yeah. One's a bit of a curveball because I didn't give you this in advance, but it's you're obviously well travelled and well read, and I'd just love to know maybe a book that's had a compelling impact in your life.
Yeah, and again referencing there's plenty of books. There's so many great. We don't read enough anymore, but there's plenty of books that I would recommend. But the one that sticks out to me is Exponential Organizations, and it's a book really on technology and how you can apply certain principles and methodologies around technologies to disrupt organizations and industries. It's fantastic, and those principles when applied. I mean, they did a study of I think it was the NASDAQ. And the companies that had those principles and the companies that haven't. And let's just say the companies that hadn't were gone. So I think it's a really compelling read. And I kind of look at the whole kind of principle around construction and just think we need to do so much more. And we need more energy put into it. We need more diversity put into it. And that book, I think, certainly kind of can drive some of that innovation.
That's brilliant. And I always finish on a final question, which is your vision for the future. And I think you've pretty touched on many points here, but what's your vision for the future of the built environment?
Put simply, I would say when I talk to my son and I say to him, and I have done this recently, what do you want to be when you grow up? I can tell you what he doesn't say. He doesn't say, I want to work in construction, I want to work in the built environment, and I want to build whatever. He doesn't say any of that. He wants to be in tech or gaming or sports or, life sciences. And I think that's kind of an issue. So I think, my vision would be a more inclusive, more diverse workforce, less red tape, obviously. Who wants red tape? And, to my point, just simplicity with technology. How do you get to a place where you can go 5 clicks and most importantly, build sustainable housing and buildings?
Just embrace innovation and be more disruptive. I think that's, I 100% agree with you. Joe, massive thanks for your time.
My pleasure.
And then just a final, if people want to find out more about BioSip, point them in the right direction.
Yeah. I mean, click on the website, go to www.bio-sip.co.uk. Easiest way, just I'm on social media, look me up, DM me. I'm always happy to collaborate and talk to people.
Brilliant. Thank you.
My pleasure.